Hey everyone, welcome into episode 6 of Tivoli Zoo. I honestly can't believe that we're already 6 episodes in. I feel like I've gotten a fair amount of stuff done, but at the same time, when I think of everything that still needs to be done, it feels like I should be a little bit further along than this through 6 episodes. But regardless of that, last episode, we were able to get a fair amount of work done here on this animal hospital, this little education satellite here. And then one thing I realized as I was watching and editing my video was that I didn't really plan for these two areas here, because right now someone could walk out of this parking garage and into the zoo there and into the zoo there. So I'm gonna have to put like fencing across here. So this is purely a staff thing, or maybe like a security booth or something. And then I'll put in an entrance here that would be mostly for like groups and things like that, or field trips. So, it's not something that's in the master plan. At least it's clear. And because of that, I'll kind of have to take some liberties here. The other thing I could do is just completely remove this staircase and extend out this landscaping here, but I would prefer to keep that in. So I'll figure that out at some point. I'm gonna have to look at a few different options, but that's definitely something I need to address going forward. So in the end of the last episode, I highlighted these buildings here, these animal barns, and I moved, so this one was faced the other way and was over here, but I moved it to this location because I'll have a third barn that will be right here. And I figured it made sense to have this stuff in between all three barns. And then in terms of getting materials into the exhibit, if you needed to backfill dirt or sand or get feed into the exhibit, it would be better to have it right by this maintenance gate here. So did that, and then also did some outdoor sections of this barn here where, at nighttime or if there's inclement weather or something, the animals or some of the animals could be stored in these areas. There will also be some barns over here that they can store animals in as well, but since it wasn't too heavy on the piece count, I decided to go ahead and do some stalls inside of these here. So we've got some hoses where they could clean out these stalls, and I even tried to, I need to fix that a little bit, but I tried to put these on tracks where these gates would slide over, and it looks like they actually would slide open for the animals. And then I put in doors here and here. I figured it would make sense that there would be a large door here just because it's, again, closer to this gate, so it's less space you would have to walk the animals into the exhibit or out of the exhibit into the barn. And then if they ever needed to load any animals on like livestock trailers or something like that, you could easily get a trailer through here and they could load out from there. Same thing here, they could load out from there, and then there's a gate out of there. So went ahead and put in stalls here, and then the third barn, which will go kind of right in this area, is going to be more rectangular and a lot taller because it's going to be used for the giraffes. But I haven't built that one yet because I need to actually get the in-game giraffe in the exhibit so that I can see how tall I need to make the doors into the barn. So that's what I spent the bulk of this initial cut working on, and we're just going to keep working on this African Savanna. I really want to establish where this pavilion is going to be, and from what I can tell in the master plan, this building is like, it's a dining hall during the day, during like normal operating hours, but it's also an event space that people could use for like corporate events or weddings even. Basically anything you can think of as an event, they would be able to utilize it. So I want to get that building in before I do much more terrain work and any more path work over here, just because it will help set the edge of this habitat and make sure that my scaling and my spacing is correct. Taking a look again at the master plan, you can see sort of the general shape of this building. I don't think I'm going to make it curved, just because I've been looking at a few different pieces of architecture as inspiration for this structure, and this is one of the first buildings that I'll have made that wasn't really a direct copy of something that already exists. I mean, I guess the drum building that I built is kind of in that vein, but I'm just taking pieces of architecture that I really like and I think would fit the theme to make this building. So all I really have to go off of is this shape here. These two round structures are basically supposed to look like African huts. And if we scroll, I believe there's some concept art. Yeah, here's a closer view of it. So it's called the watering hole. You can see there's tons and tons of seating for people to eat. So it's really designed to be a major dining stop for anyone visiting the zoo. And then you can kind of see there, it's got the African hut on the edge. And then here is probably the best shot of any concept art there is of what the structure actually will look like. And obviously this building here is our drum, and that's the education satellite right here. And because we did something completely different there, I'm going to do the same thing with these over here. So one of the pieces of inspiration I found are these incredible wood pillars that are actually a part of, I think they've been used to build a museum in Paris, and then also currently under construction as a part of an airport. I can't remember where the airport is, but I'll throw up an image so you know what I'm referencing and looking at. But I thought they kind of resembled trees. So this is my first attempt at capturing that. To be honest, this is using the little technique where you rotate things around, and I'm not completely happy with how this looks. I don't think it looks bad. It just doesn't look as close to the reference image as I was hoping. So I'm going to have to do some more work here and try to figure out exactly how to make these pillars work. I decided to keep one of these pillars just as a reference for height on this building, and then also spacing as we move across. But looking closer at a lot of the reference images and the concept art for this type of construction, they all start with this hexagon shape here and this lattice work of hexagons, and that's basically the grid shape that you use to form these pillars. So now that I've kind of got a better feel for that, I'm gonna try to rework some of these pillars here. One interesting thing just to talk briefly about this type of construction. So it's a material called glued laminated timber, and they use it to make all kinds of crazy shapes with wood. It's not just limited to this type of design. They can use it for arches and really almost any shape you can think of. They can use that technique. Sometimes it's also referred to as cross laminated timber. They're slightly different. Cross laminated timber, the wood intersects one another, so you would have basically right angles of the wood as you're laminating it together. Whereas glued laminated timber, they try to lay the grain in the same direction, and that's what allows them to, make these crazy shapes out of wood. So it's really cool, something that I've just started learning a little bit about as I was researching this. It's a really sustainable construction technique. It's incredibly strong. I don't know in terms, I tried to research like the the weight to strength ratio relative to steel, because I don't imagine that it's as light as steel or as strong, or maybe it's as strong but heavier. So I'm not sure how high they can actually build structures utilizing cross laminated timber or glued laminated timber, but regardless, it's really cool. It allows for some incredible architecture. So I'm gonna try to make these look more like the reference image. This took so much longer than I would have liked, but finally have something that I'm really happy with. It took me a minute to figure out that like these shapes here, so if you follow this beam like that it doesn't wrap around the pillar. It kind of looks like it does, but it's just an optical illusion. It's, these stay completely straight. They stay on their grid. And looking closer at the reference pics, you can see like they maintain that hexagon here. So there's a hexagon, ultimately this would still be a hexagon. So if you think about how these pillars are formed, if you took just one of these hexagons and pushed it to the ground, if you took it and pushed it to the ground or pulled it to the ground, it stretches out these other hexagons, and that's how you get the shape. But after doing one and then piecing them all together, it made me realize that the reason these are so strong is that at the end of the day, this is just a big arch. So even though this is made of wood, even though, yes, it's laminated wood, so it's very strong, and these are, you know, small, narrow pillars that make up one massive pillar, the strength is really derived from this arch shape here. And if you think about the design, what's so genius about it is not only do you have an arch here, but you have an arch on this piece here. You have arch that goes from that pillar to this pillar, so it explains why it's so strong and why it's able to hold up a roof of this size. So one thing I noticed for several of the concept designs that I looked at for this, they all had skylights sort of in the center of the pillar, and I really wanted to implement that as well. So that was the start of the roof, and it's just going to be a very simple flat roof up top here, and then we'll put a nice edge around it. But yeah, this took forever. I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. There was a point about halfway through that I was ready to just scrap it and move on. But yeah, really happy with how this turned out. All right, this is my initial thought for the cladding that kind of goes over this roof here. I was inspired for the color by the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. It's where the Nets play, and I think the New York Islanders play as well. But yeah, I really liked the color of it. It looks kind of like a rusted metal, and I thought that it really, looking at some of the more contemporary architecture out of Africa, it seemed like there was a lot of this kind of look to it. And so for that reason, I thought it went with the biome pretty well. But I'm trying to kind of figure out what I'm going to do with this space here. You know, I like the idea of potentially having like tables and umbrellas and stuff under this awning here, but at the same time, this would not be an efficient use of this space. You know, this would be a fairly expensive building to make, probably 60 to $70 million building, and in order to maximize revenue generation, if they're going to use this as an event space, you would want to have as large of an event space as you possibly could. You know, you'd probably have it where it could be sectioned off into smaller spaces, but you know, if there was going to be a huge massive event, you'd want to be able to host that and have everyone be indoors in case of weather. But also I want there to be a balcony that looks out onto the savannah, so that people can enjoy that as well. So like I said, I'm piecing this together from lots of different types of inspiration, so I'm kind of stuck at the moment on what I'm going to do next, but I do like where this is headed. I decided to go ahead and expand this interior space and move that first glass wall closer to the edge. I expanded out this terrain here so that it would provide a nice balcony that people could look over the watering hole and then into the savannah. And what finally sold me on this was I looked at one of the airport concepts, and it did have some of this wood going through the glass. I was worried about, you know, how it might hold up to weather, rain, or even dry climate. Colorado can be pretty dry at times. So once I saw that, and I knew that it was possible for these glue laminated beams to be outside, I went ahead and made the decision to expand that space. I also decided to add in some metal detail here. These are supposed to be emblematic of like African huts, so just some very simple designs, but I looked at, you know, a lot of reference images of African huts and tried to provide a little bit more of a modern take on some of those designs that are painted on them. So I really like how that looks all the way around. I didn't want them to necessarily touch. I wanted them to look like they were, you know, separate panels that all had that design, because in some respects too, I think they also kind of look like an African shield turned lengthwise. So again, once I figured out that this kind of timber could be outside, I think the museum in France especially has a huge pillar that's just right out in the open. I decided I wanted that to kind of be the gateway or the entrance into the building. And then after I figured that out, I wanted there to be, I didn't want it to just be a big rectangle kind of propped up, really, really tall out of the ground. So I decided there would need to be some way to move people in and out of the building fairly easily with multiple, so you can enter in this way and then, enter and exit through here as well. And then obviously there needs to be facilities to make the building actually function. So we've got restrooms back here, and then it kind of looks cheesy compared to the rest of the building, but I've got some food stalls in here as well, because there would, during the day when the zoo is open, this would be a public space that people could utilize to eat lunch. So I've got those in there. I might add a couple more, and I might do something to kind of dress these up a little bit, but I do want to keep the simple wall here. So these are just the limestone wall pieces, and I really like how simple they look. There's not really any ornamentation on the wall. They're just very clean, and I think what that does is it really highlights what your eye should be drawn to when you walk in, and that's the ceiling and these incredible beams. So once I realized I needed to have food options, though, that kind of helped frame in this backstage here. So you'll have backstage access into what would be the kitchen and the restroom and storage and things like that. And then from here, this really opens up and gives us an opportunity to create a pretty nice plaza as it feeds into what will be the next exhibit area. Big jump ahead here. This is going to be the last update of this episode. I wish I would have paused a little bit more and shown you some more progress in between, but I just kind of got into a groove and wanted to finish this up. And I wish there was more to show you, period, in this episode, but this building just took way longer than I thought it was going to, and mostly because of these pillars here. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that this had just tons and tons of seating. In fact, as I kind of clean up the area around it, I'll make sure that there's probably even more benches than this. But yeah, I wanted it to be very obvious from the outside that, this is a place where you can come get food and stop and eat lunch. And I just decided to carry this design over to this here. And then if we cut back a little bit and look at the plaza leading up to it. So we've got some of these more modern steps that head up to the event space, and then I just wanted there to be mostly grasses out front here. Again, landscaping is not my strong suit, but I think it looks really nice. And the reason I went with the grass is that these details here are supposed to be representative of like the grass on the African Savanna. That's basically the source of life on the Savanna. So I wanted to use those as the support structure for this awning here, and then just kind of carried it down into the real grass over here. The other sort of thing I did was, this is supposed to look sort of like zebra stripes. I'm not sure if it totally sells that, but that's what it's supposed to be, is supposed to look like zebra stripes on the cladding on the outside of this building here. Like I said, I pulled a lot of different inspiration from different concepts and different buildings, and hopefully I pieced it together in a cohesive way. A lot of times if you do too many different features and stuff, they don't necessarily work in harmony. I think they do in this case, but I didn't want to necessarily go too crazy. There's a few concept images I was looking at that would have been really cool, but I just feel like they would have put this over the top. It's kind of like those tasty videos where it's like bacon cheeseburger with mac and cheese and lobster. It's like, all of those things individually are great, but put them together and it's kind of too much. So I really like how this turned out. I think that it all works really well together, but yeah, I'd love your comments and your feedback down below. So I still have to figure out how I'm going to do the doors. I want them to pretty much just be sliding glass doors here, but you know, the only glass pieces we have are those bulky ones, and I think it would kind of look weird. So still figuring that out, but yeah, added a bunch of benches to the interior here, and again, need to figure out a door solution over there as well. But I really cannot wait to finish more of the African Savanna, because this view here out of this restaurant or dining area or / event space is going to be incredible, especially once we get animals in there. This is all going to have rock work on it, so all of that will be hidden as well. And then you'll also be able to exit and enter from over here. You'll just be able to go right onto the patio if you want to. Let me hop out of the tagged cam there. So here's an aerial view of it, and again, I'm going to keep following this pattern. I'll probably do like something like this over here as well, but it's going to slowly slope downward into sort of the next area. One thing that's really cool is the Denver Zoo has an animal carousel right here, and I wish we had that in the game. I really hope that at some point they add that. That would be incredible. But I am going to make the pavilion for it right here at least, so that, you know, on the off chance we do ever get it in the future, all I have to do is plop the ride down there. Started working on this little train feature. So right now the Denver Zoo does have a train, but it just goes in a really simple loop. It doesn't really interact with any of the exhibits. In the master plan, they call for an extension of the train where it actually would go into this African Savanna here. So started working on the terrain for that, and I needed to get this low enough where I could put a bridge over this. So there'll be a pedestrian bridge that goes over this and connects this pathway to the area that will come over here, and then from this spot you move into the Peaks and Prairie exhibit, and then the primate area is back here in the Denver Zoo, and then it kind of loops around back over here. There's like a really pretty garden area in here, and then it connects up back here, and then we have our Indian rhino and Indian elephant exhibit, and then this over here will be the Asian highlands and then Asian predators, and then we've got our coastal exhibit over here, and then the tropical house is down over here. So like I said, lots to do. You know, many more episodes to come. In the next episode, we're just going to continue working on the African Savanna. You know, I said in the last one that it would probably be 2 or 3 parts. Now I'm thinking it probably might be more like 4, but we'll see how much we get done in the next episode. You know, candidly, I need to do a ton more terrain work. Like, I was looking at the Google Street View, because this path does exist already. So I was looking at that, and there's a lot more elevation change that I need to put in here that I don't have. But overall, really happy with the spacing of how this is looking. I may run out of room over here, and I might have to take some creative liberties with the primate exhibit, and also with the Peaks to Prairie exhibit, just to make sure I have enough space. But overall, couldn't be happier with how things are shaping up here. And to date, I think this is my favorite thing that I've ever done in either Planet Coaster or Planet Zoo. So. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. That's going to do it for this episode. Hope you all have a great week, and I will see you in episode 7.